What's going on, guys? It's Jacob from Topside MMA, and I'm bringing you my picks for UFC Fight Night Taira versus Park. So let's get right into it. First up, we got Piera Rodriguez versus Ketlen Souza. Now, I know a lot of people are going with Ketlen Souza because they're chasing that dog money, the dog play, but I would be a little bit hesitant. If we look at Ketlen Souza, we've seen she really got, I don't want to say worked by Angela Hill, but Angela Hill won in numerous aspects of this fight. If we go and check this one out, she was able to outstrike and outcontrol her, which is a concern since now she's fighting Piera Rodriguez. Now, if you look at the stats, 4 minutes of control time. Yeah, only 2 of 6 takedowns, but 4.5 minutes of control time. And I noticed some of that was standing up too against the cage. That factors into that. So, but still though, 4.5 minutes of a 41-year-old Angela Hill is a problem when she's fighting Piera Rodriguez, who's going to have that same game plan that she could implement. And especially, she got outstriked too. Wasn't the best look. This concerns me less, because Angela Hill is a good striker. But the grappling and the control is what scares me in this one since she's going against Rodriguez. Now, because we know Rodriguez, in her last fight against Josephine Knudsen, that's how she won this fight. She was able to out-grapple. She controlled her on the ground. She landed takedowns. She was dominating on the ground, and that's really how she got it, because she knew that Knudsen was a kickboxer, and that was her background. So she knew the way to win was through the takedowns and the ground control. And I think against a girl like Ketlen Souza, that Rodriguez is going to know Souza's best chance is she has power. She has knockout power. She can hurt people. We saw when Ketlen, she hurt Haguri. I know I'm not saying that right, but when she hurt her, she got the submission, but it was because she rocked her on the feet and then immediately pounced and just wrapped up the submission. She would not have been able to get that submission had she not rocked her, and a lot of that came from her knockout power. She has 8 wins out of 15 by knockout. For women, that's very impressive, because they don't have as much power. But we've seen her ground game holes, like we've seen Angela Hill worked her on the ground, and Danny Silva really dominated her on the ground. Popped her knee out. It was disgusting. Bad injury. So we know that Souza has holes on the ground that could be exploited, And I think Rodriguez is the type of girl to where she wants to win, She takes everything personally. She's kind of like a bully out there. She just wants to dominate. She wants to look you in your face. She'll talk shit, She'll yap. Like she will do what she needs to do to win. I think her fight IQ is a bit of a problem, like we saw against Carnelossi, where she was winning the fight, and she has this girl on the ground. She's in a dominant position. She hits her with her head. Ref says, hey, don't headbutt her. What does she do 2 seconds later? Boom, headbutts her, gets DQ'd. Now, this girl completely quit. It was really soft. Like, she took a full 5+ minutes from a very light headbutt, and she couldn't continue. She definitely could. She definitely was faking. She was acting. She definitely just knew she was going to get her ass kicked if that fight continued, so she just stopped while she was ahead so she could get that win. But I count this fight, honestly, as a win minus her fight IQ. So that her fight IQ does worry me a bit, but we've seen she has the ability to dominate on the ground. She did it here. She did it here. She was not able to do it against Jillian Robertson, which makes sense, though, because that's her bread and butter. Jillian Robertson's ground game that's her best attribute. That's where she wants to fight, is on the ground where she can submit you. So this fight doesn't really bother me a whole lot. I think Jillian Robertson is a whole lot more dangerous on the ground than Ketlen Souza is, and I don't think she'll have any problems with that, But on the other hand, I think Rodriguez is going to have the ground game advantage. I think she could easily take down Ketlen Souza, or maybe not easily, but I think that's her best way to win, and I think she has that path clear as day. We've seen her implement it against girls who had better striking than she did if she had the problem with it. So she should be able to do the same against Ketlen Souza. I think so. But I think for this odd breakdown, like for minus 200 pretty much versus plus 165, the value's got to be on Souza because, she has power in her hands. Yeah, we haven't seen Rodriguez knocked out before, but all it takes is one time, one good shot. It is a fist fight after all. Ketlen Souza has the power to do that, so I totally get why people are going with the dog this week on this fight, especially. But I'm picking Rodriguez just because she has that clear path. We've seen Souza struggle with it before. We've seen Rodriguez have recent success with the ground game. For that reason, I got to go with her, but not very confidently, just because anything can happen. It's a fist fight. She's shown not the best fight IQ, but she has that dog in her, and I think that'll help. She will definitely do whatever she needs to win, no matter how clean or how dirty it needs to be. So I think Rodriguez could easily go a full 3 rounds, just sticking to a ground and pound type of game plan. We're going for the takedowns. I think she can do that. So give me Piera Rodriguez in this first one. Next up, we got Rafael Estevam versus Felipe Bunes. Now, I like Rafael Estevam. Now, the thing with him, though, is that he is not great with the cardio, and he's taking this fight on relatively short notice. I think it's going to be about 5 weeks notice because he was aware of this fight. Or no, I think 4 weeks because he was aware of it on July 2nd, I think, is when they announced this fight. I looked it up. It was about a month ago when they announced it. So if this fight's coming up on Saturday, he should have 4-ish plus weeks. So I think his cardio should be decent. And the thing is with Felipe Bunes, I'm not super worried about him either because his cardio has never been like his super like strong suit. You know, like he's the type of guy who starts to wear down a little bit as fights go on into the later rounds. Not as bad as Rafael Estevam because we've seen Estevam, since he's such a one-trick wrestling type of fighter, once he can't implement that game plan, he really struggles to win those third rounds if he gets to it. And since he's not really going for a whole lot of submissions, he has decent grappling. Like, he only has 3 submission wins. He only has that. But at the same time, you know, he does have good submission abilities. We saw him get out of some nasty stuff. I think it was against Jesus Aguilar or Charles Johnson. It was one of those two. I think it was Jesus Aguilar, where he was in some tricky submission spots and he had to get out of them. And, you know, he really showed some good scrambling abilities that showed, all right, he's not just a wrestle, like, one trick who can't hang on the ground too and get caught in random submissions. So I'm not worried about that here from Felipe Bunes unless it gets into the really later rounds. But at the same time with Felipe Bunes, he just hasn't been able to show that. And another reason why I'm really leaning with Rafael Estevam this week, even though given the odds are pretty wide, considering he has such a hard fall off and this is coming in short notice, or a little bit short notice, it's just the difference of competition. He beat Jesus Aguilar, who's not very good, but he's a decent fighter, and he beat Charles Johnson too. And Charles Johnson is just, I think he's a lot better than his record suggests. I really like Charles Johnson. I'm a big fan of his. I don't like sometimes how he can have that slow start. I think he's lost a lot of fights that way. But at the same time, he's very high level. He knocked out Josh Fan, who's obviously doing so damn well nowadays. And at the same time, we saw him lose to Josh Fan. Now, I think Rafael Estevam would probably put up a better chance against Josh Fan than Felipe Bunes would. And the submission win against Jose Johnson is a good win. But at the same time, Jose Johnson has been submitted multiple times before. He's just not all that talented. And it's a good win on one hand. I forget how many times has Jose Johnson been submitted. It was, 5 times. 5 out of his 10 losses have been by submission. So it's not like this guy's immune to being submitted. That was the path to win there. And with only 2 fights in the UFC, that Josh Van knockout loss is a tough one. But at the same time, I'm leaning Rafael Estevam. Just one thing that adds to it is that at least Rafael Estevam beat Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson knocked out Josh Van. I know the MMA math is kind of wild for that one. But at the same time, I think Charles Johnson is one of those guys who's so tall and lengthy that he's tough to take down. You know, Charles Johnson has amazing cardio. He can go all 3 rounds easy. So if you really can take him down and dominate him like Rafael Estevam did, I think he should be able to do the same with Felipe Bunes, who's not as dangerous on the hand, with the hands especially, and the striking, and won't even be near as dangerous as Charles Johnson. You know, Felipe Bunes, his only chance in this one is really to hopefully land a submission late in the third. So if you could say maybe he could catch Rafael Estevam with something early, there's just nothing that's really shown that stuck out to me that suggests or warrants that he would do that. You know, especially we've seen Rafael Estevam, yes, he's undefeated, but he's really never been in any bad spots from his wrestling. You know, he has the same game plan with every fight. You know how he's going to fight, but he still manages to succeed and beat good level of competition. Like his wins are better than Felipe Bunes. 1 win in the UFC against Jose Johnson. There's just a whole nother level of caliber here. And as long as he can maintain that pace for 2 rounds, I still don't see him getting submitted in the third, simply because Felipe Bunes is just not some cardio demon Marab machine who's super slick on the ground. Like, I don't see the reality in where he loses this fight. But at the same time, when you have a guy like Rafael Estevam who doesn't have the striking to hang, and it's very lacking compared to his wrestling, and his cardio is a major concern. He's taking this up on somewhat short notice, and he's going against a guy who can get good submissions. He's tricky on the ground. The round 3 sub for Felipe is live. You know, I don't think that would not blow my mind if that were to happen. I don't think it does, but I would not be mind blown if that were to happen. So for minus 500, I think this line is pretty shot unless you're taking Estevam by decision. There might be some value in that. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm staying off of it. Next up, we got Bashi versus Yannis. Now, I have not been able to do a whole lot of research into Yannis. I looked up some of his fights. I watched his fight against Cameron Smotherman, actually. This is one that stood out to me. And same with this Gabriel Wanderlei. Those are the two. I just wanted to see his losses. He knocked out the guy that Peyton Talbot finished to, which was interesting, this Nick Gore guy. See, when did Peyton Talbot finish him? It was 2023. Yeah, he subbed him out. But anyway, this Yannis guy, he looks decent. You know, he is older. He's 31, so he's had more experience. But at the same time, you look at their fights, 9-3, and Bashi's what, 13-1. Now, the thing with this Yannis guy that made me very confident in Bashi here is that only 3 years ago, we saw him fight Cameron Smotherman. If you go back and watch this fight, Cameron Smotherman was dogging his ass in the striking. And he had no other real solution to it. Now, in the first round, too, if you go and look at this fight, he gets saved by the bell. Cameron Smotherman knocks him down, and he's just wailing on this dude on the ground. And the ref goes to stop because the round is over. And all of the people there supporting Cameron Smotherman just start going insane. They start jumping. They're like, oh, they're like screaming and yelling, and they're all super excited because they think it's over. They think the ref called it because he was getting his ass kicked that bad. People couldn't even hear the 10-second warning. Like, that's how bad he was getting his ass kicked against Cameron Smotherman. And I think Cameron Smotherman is decent, but in the UFC so far, he's had a tough run. He's got dominated by Ricky Simone and Saraside too. Like, I mean, those two guys are both good, but he definitely had a tough run, and these guys both not completely dominated, but those fights were not that close. They were not competitive. He got dominated. And against a guy like Bashi, who has such a good wrestling pressure threat, you know, yes, he lost to, what's his name? Christian Rodriguez. But Christian Rodriguez has amazing sprawling and takedown defense. You know, if any UFC debuted for Bashi, that was probably the hardest one he could have had. You know, C-Rod's the damn prospect killer for a reason. C-Rod is very good. He's slept on. He's a very, very talented fighter. And I think Bashi still looked good in that. You know, he just gassed out. And that was the main thing. You know, it was his UFC debut, too. I was trying to see what they scored that one. Was it 29-28? Yeah. Because I remember he came out hot, and he got a backpack position, and he looked so damn good. It was just, in the later on, as that fight continued, he couldn't keep that same pace. C-Rod has amazing cardio. That's how he lost that one there. And I thought Bashi was going to beat C-Rod. I thought it was going to break the prospect killer streak, but obviously he came up on top there. But against this guy, I like him a lot. Yannis, now he was taking this fight. People think he's taking it on super short notice. He actually is not taking it on super short notice. Yes, this fight just got announced today or yesterday. So it's not like, obviously, we knew about it in the UFC. So stylistically, yes. But at the same time, he was training to defend his belt in Fury FC coming up in, it was August 22nd, I believe. So it was like a week or two, or I think 2 or 3 weeks after this fight that he's having with Bashi. He was scheduled to fight, so he was training, he was prepping for it. He's not going to be just coming off the couch on some Dan Ige type of shit. But, you know, that is something to consider, you know, especially when we know Bashi is going to implement a heavy grappling, wrestling game plan that drains your cardio so fast. And all the research I did on Yannis, I went through his Instagram, I was looking at his training. This dude shows nothing on the ground. All of his highlights, all of his training videos, it's all boxing. Anytime he posts pictures, he has hand wraps on from boxing. Like, this dude, he's always hitting pads. Like, I couldn't find anything of him rolling on the ground or anything. Like, this dude is just a boxer. And I do not think that is going to hold up against a guy like Bashi, who's just a pressure-heavy wrestler who can get submissions. You know, he's cheeky. He'll get your back. He'll backpack you. And I think he's going to sub Yannis. I think Yannis is going to get subbed. I think it's going to be early. I don't think it gets out of the second round. I like Bashi a lot this week. I already have money on him. I got him when the lines dropped. They just dropped today. That's how confident I am in him. I think he does a great job. Just the level of competition, we saw him do really well against C-Rod, and he would have honestly won that fight if he had better cardio. Cardio is something he can fix. I think he has the skill set to beat a guy like even C-Rod, so he definitely should be able to beat a guy like Yannis, who really hasn't looked great. And in Yannis' the most recent loss, this Gabriel Wanderlei kid, he got submitted round 2 by this young, I think this kid's 22, 21, 23, somewhere in there. Yeah, 23. Short little, or actually he's tall, but he's a little feisty little grappler kid. I looked at his Tapology profile. I was looking at his amateur scene. I was like, this dude, he's kind of similar to Austin Bashi. He's just a feisty little grappler who just wants to get on your back, choke you out, rear naked choke. That's how we got him. I think Austin Bashi does the same exact thing. So I'm confident in Austin Bashi this week. I like him here a lot. Next up, we got Nick Klein versus Andrey Pulyaev. Now, let's get these out of here. Boom, Nick Klein. Now, I'm actually taking the dog in Nick Klein this week. I like Nick Klein, and I think the odds are fair on this. In my personal opinion, I think the odds should be flipped. I think if there was to put anything on this, I think Nick Klein should be the slight favorite. Pulyaev should be the slight underdog. So I don't get why, too. These odds completely flipped. Like, they went from, like, completely one way to completely flipping the other way around, which is very weird. But anyway, it is what it is. I like Nick Klein this week purely just off of these guys' resumes. You know, we know going into this, Pulyaev should probably be the better striker. Nick Klein should probably be the better grappler. It's kind of who could implement their way. And I think a lot of people are picking Pulyaev because they saw, CLD, when he fought him, Christian Leroy Duncan, he had good takedown defense against him. And while you're right, it wasn't like CLD even needed to land the takedowns. He was able to have success just pressuring him against the cage. It's not like he needed to do the takedown. He could just pull a Mario Bautista and just hold you against the cage, and that's how he can win rounds. I think that's how Nick Klein can win this. Now, I know a lot of people are doubting Nick Klein. They're like, oh, he got rocked against Mansour. And yeah, Mansour messed him up. But the thing is, though, he took that fight on short notice. And if you look at these scorecards, too, when his fight against Mansour Abdulalik, he won the first round. I think Mansour is an absolute problem in this division. I think he is going to be very, very successful. I think he's very talented. Physically, he's insanely jacked. He has good cardio to last. I think he has good fight IQ, good mindset to go behind it. I think he's just all around the perfect picture. I think he's just a well-rounded guy who can do perfectly well in the UFC. And the fact that Nick Klein took a round on him, off of him, like he won that first round on short notice, says a lot. And that performance, even in the knockout loss, means a lot more to me than Pulyev's fight against Christian Leroy Duncan. He had no moments of success at all during this fight. He got completely dominated from start to finish. There was no moment. At least we saw with Nick Klein in the striking, he almost knocked out Mansour Abdulalik. It was close. If Mansour had a worse chin, he'd be on a knockout win streak right now. And who knows where Nick Klein would be talking, like talk-wise, like what people would be saying. Who knows? So comparing their last performances, one is just so much different than the other. And these guys are both, like, neither of them are anything crazy, but we just seen one guy do one way on short notice versus Pulyaev. He did not look good, and especially when he beat Liam Anderson, it was a decision over a guy who honestly has a similar fight style to Nick Klein. He's just a wrestler. He's just trying to push forward. He's just trying to stay in your face. But Liam Anderson is just not that good. If you go look, he's sloppy. Kind of started to wear down. Had nothing to hang at all really once Pulyaev was able to kind of stop the takedowns and keep it standing. This fight was pretty damn boring. Pulyaev did not look good, just considering how poor Anderson looked. Or at least with Nick Klein in his UFC debut, he was the underdog. He came in and got a round one submission, 37 seconds. Like, I just don't get in the last 2 years what these guys both have done in their performances. I don't get what warrants Pulyaev to be a minus 150 favorite. I don't think there's any value in that. Especially, it's not like he has some huge reach advantage either. It's very close. Sure, yeah, and they're striking close enough. You look at the numbers, there's not a whole lot to really lean towards Pulyaev. And besides the numbers, I wasn't even talking about that. I was talking more just their fight history, their last couple fights. I like Nick Klein in this one. I'm not super confident because this is a lower level fight. Anything could happen. If Pulyaev can keep the distance and can keep Klein off of him, then, he could have success. I think, if anything, the best opportunity would be, if you are to take this, I think Nick Klein's best chance will be early. So I think Nick Klein will look the best early on when he's fresh. They're both slick, or they're not sweaty. They're both pretty dry. That'll be his best chances to win this fight. The odds could skew. I think that would be the time to hit Pulyaev. Pulyaev will probably look better as this fight goes on. But anyway, just for the pick though, I like Nick Klein. I'm taking him as the underdog. Next up, we got Rodolfo Vieira versus Tresean Gore. Now, this is a tough one. I think these odds are pretty fair. This feels similar to the Davy Grant, Damon Blackshear in the sense of if Vieira can stick to his game plan, and I don't think there's a fight IQ issue with Vieira. I don't think it's that at all. So maybe not Damon Blackshear. He showed holes with that. But it's just a matter of if Vieira can take it down, he should dominate Tresean Gore. But if he can't, it's going to be a problem. Now, I think Gore is honestly underrated. Is he the most technical? No. But he's a very good athlete. This dude has serious power, and he is kind of slept on because of his last performance. I mean, Marco Tulio absolutely beat the brakes off of him. But Marco Tulio is a damn problem. It was the kicks that Marco Tulio had where he couldn't keep the distance, or he couldn't close the distance. Marco Tulio was able to land from range, keep him at a distance. And by the time that Tresean Gore could finally close in, and later on as the fight was starting to go through, he was just too beat up. He was worn out. He got too many shots. The damage was adding up. He was just not as explosive as he's been in previous fights. Because we've seen him. I mean, yes, he has these guillotines that are kind of like a Chris Duncan guillotine, where it's like not a one-trick pony, but at the same time, it's like you can't really rely on that to do well. So I get why people doubt that. But I'm not even talking about his submission game, because obviously he's not going to get a damn submission against Rodolfo Vieira. At least I would hope not. I don't see the random guillotine coming. I don't see that happening at all. I think Tresean Gore's best chance is to rock Vieira. We've seen him rocked before, and I think there's a decent chance that Tresean Gore goes out there and knocks out Rodolfo Vieira. I could definitely see it happening. I would not be surprised at all. That's why I'm taking Rodolfo Vieira as the pick, but this seems very risky to me because you're basically betting on Rodolfo Vieira having a masterclass grappling performance where he's able to grapple Tresean Gore the entire time. Now, I do think that Rodolfo Vieira could submit Tresean Gore, because Tresean Gore, he's just said he's grew up fighting on the streets, and then as he got older, he's starting to refine his game and he's starting to train, so he's trying to take his natural athleticism, kind of turn it into a fighter. Whereas Rodolfo Vieira is a very well accomplished grappler, very well respected grappler, very high level BJJ black belt. So if this gets to the ground, I think there's a very good chance Vieira does submit Gore. But I think people underestimate Gore's power. If he lands, he hurts people. He has a ton of power. He doesn't throw a ton, as you can see. It's kind of crazy. Tresean Gore throws less than Rodolfo Vieira in 6 strikes per minute. But at the same time, when he throws to kill people. And it's like when you have someone who throws bombs and you have a guy who's a BJJ, not one trick. Vieira's striking has gotten better over time, but he relies on his grappling, the takedowns, the ground game. That's a strong suit. That's he has all of his stat points onto his grappling and submission abilities. He has good takedowns too. His takedowns are good. He's not just a pull guard type of guy. He has more to his game than that. So got to put the respect on Rodolfo Vieira. But the striking, the power in the hands, and Gore is quick too. I'm worried early on. If Gore got a round 1 knockout, I would not be surprised at all. Just because he has the power, he has the speed, he is dangerous. But at the same time, I just think Vieira has the clear path, take it to the ground, dominate on the ground, wear him out. And then the longer this goes on, Gore's explosiveness, his knockout power is just going to go down and down and down and down and down. He's going to tire out. Even though he does have relatively decent cardio, he's just going to get more and more tired as this goes on. He's going to have less pop in his hands, and I think Vieira should be able to get this done on the scorecards or even a submission too. So I like Vieira in this one. So moving on, we got Rinya Nakamura versus Nathan Fletcher. Now, Rinya Nakamura, he got his ass kicked against Wayne Gafarov, but that was more of an IQ problem, and you will not see Rinya Nakamura on a betting slip from me. I might have a little play on a decision, just because I don't think he's submitting Nathan Fletcher. I think Nathan Fletcher has good ground game to survive that. It could be a knockout. I don't know. I don't see it. I don't think Nathan Fletcher knocked out one time. Who knocked him out? Dominic Woody in 2021. Yeah, Cage Warriors. Because in this fight against Callum Loughran, this is why these odds are so cooked, because he got controlled. I want to see. They each had their success in this moment. I thought Nathan Fletcher actually ended up winning this. I knew he lost, but I mean, in terms of how I ranked it or how I scored it. Where was he down here? What was the control time? At 4 to I thought he had. Oh, I thought these guys were flipped. Yeah, 6 minutes to 4 minutes. That makes some bad sense, striking. Yeah, he doubled him though. I remember this being a weird one because I thought he did. I thought Nathan Fletcher had it. I remember when this fight happened, I bet the plus 3.5 on Nathan Fletcher, which was a good hit. It was like I did it reversed, like an alternate plus 3.5, and I did it parlayed with something. It might have been CLD. Yeah, it's the same card. That's funny. But yeah, so Nathan Fletcher, he's made me some money in the past. I like Nathan Fletcher in that sense. And I thought he did win this fight. It was close. But if we're comparing the wrestling of Rinya Nakamura to Colin Loughran, Rinya should hopefully, dear God, he should have the advantage in him over that. Colin Loughran is just a big potato head on a small body. And yeah, he's not the best high-level fighter. So this wasn't the best look. I think that's definitely a bit of recency bias in this performance, especially considering Gafurov kicked his ass and he's now a minus 450 favorite still. And this line's getting a little tighter. It was wider at first. So if you just look at it from purely a wrestling standpoint, you got to lean Rinya Nakamura. But if you think of the full mixed martial arts, the full well-rounded fighter, Nathan Fletcher's better. He's more well-rounded for sure. Rinya, obviously, he does not have hands. His chin is a problem. He's just extremely athletic. He's very strong. He's fast. He has good cardio. If he sticks to a game plan, he should beat Nathan Fletcher. But I don't think he's safe. I don't think he's worth it at this. I am going to most likely be avoiding this. Maybe a sprinkle on like a Rinya by decision, just because I don't think he finishes Nathan Fletcher. But I don't want to say it's a trap because Rinya's been not fraud checked, but we know his holes in his game, so we know about that. So it's not really a trap when you know it's there ahead of time. But at the same time, it kind of, for these odds, it does feel like a trap. I'll go Rinya, but if he shit the bed, I would not be surprised. Now, this is probably my easiest pick on the entire card. Lock, big lock, Kevin Vallejos. Kevin Vallejos is something special. I could go on about Kevin Vallejos. I'm a huge Kevin Vallejos fan. I think one day he could definitely be the champion. I could see the belt around this kid. He is something different. And then you have Danny Silva. Danny Silva, put some respect on his name. I like Danny Silva. He's a cool dude. He's just not beating Kevin Vallejos. He's not doing it. It's not going to be close. It's going to be Kevin Vallejos having his way. And I feel bad for Danny Silva because he doesn't deserve this. But unfortunately, yeah, he's getting Kevin Vallejos. I feel bad for anyone who has to fight Kevin Vallejos. And he's a very most confident pick on this entire card. He's the lock of this card. Now, there's really one main big reason, and it's the Gene Silva fight. I know people say, oh, well, I mean, he's still lost. Like you can't base it off of one fight. Let's just start with Danny Silva. Danny Silva does not have power in his hands, and against a guy like Kevin Vallejos, that is a extremely big problem. Danny Silva is a striker. He wants to keep it on his feet. He does not have a single submission win to his name. That is a problem against a guy like Kevin Vallejos. Because if you're going to beat Kevin Vallejos, it's not going to be on the feet unless you're Gene Silva. And even then, it was a close fight. So, a guy like Danny Silva, I don't see a way for him to win. You're going to split decisions with Lucas Almeida and Josh Kulibau. You're not beating Kevin Vallejos. It's not happening. Now, Lucas Almeida is better than Josh Kulibau. Josh Kulibau already is cut from the UFC. He's just not that good. Both of these guys, their records are decent. They only have a couple losses. They have a decent amount of wins. But if you look and compare it to Kevin Vallejos' fight with Gene Silva, purely off this alone, I know this is just one example, one fight this kid's had, but that's his only loss. And if you look at this too, go here, he won a round against Gene Silva. He won a round. He went the distance. Look at this, 29-28. He won a single round, and you know how old he was when he had this fight? This was 2023. He's 23 now. 2 years ago, he was 21 years old, and he took a round off of Gene Silva, and they went the distance. And his damn Dana White Contender Series debut. This kid's something special. Hopefully one day they'll get a rematch. That would be sick because these guys have a similar build. He's basically the Argentinian Gene Silva. And I think Gene Silva would absolutely have his way with Danny Silva. It would not be close. It would not be pretty. And yeah, there's not a whole lot more I have to say about this one. I'm extremely confident in Kevin Vallejos. I think he gets it done however way he wants it. I could see it being a knockout. I could see it being a submission. I could see it going to a decision, but I don't think so. I think Kevin Vallejos gets it done, most likely by knockout. And I don't think it's going to be pretty. So, not a whole lot to say about that one. I'm a big Kevin Vallejos fan. A little biased in that pick, I must say. A little biased. But if you take a step back and you look at it, Kevin Vallejos is the real deal. He is the real deal. He can strike. He can grapple. He has a good chin. He is super strong. He's athletic. He has great cardio. He has no quit in him. He has decent fight IQ too. I mean, like, at only 23 years old. Yeah, that's... Unfortunately for Danny Silva, he's about to take another L. His second is coming. So, next up, we got Neil Magny versus Elijah Zaleski dos Santos. Now, I know Neil Magny is also a public dog this week, and I get it. And I actually think it's decently valid, you know. Both of these guys are getting older. They're going to lose a little bit of that speed, of that agility. And you look at it, you're like, all right, Dos Santos is the more dangerous guy. And you're totally right. He is the more dangerous fighter. He has more finishing abilities. You look at Neil Magny, only 8 knockout wins and 29 wins, you know. Is this Mike Malott? This is purely because he gassed. And when he got this knockout win, too, those were the lightest pillow punches I've ever seen in my entire life. And you look before that knockout win, and where are we at? 2018, Craig White, you know. So it's not like Neil Magny has really any pop in his hands. And he's not that dangerous. And I feel like against a guy like Dos Santos, you know, we saw Chidi knock him out. But it's like, other than that, if Randy Brown didn't knock him out, I don't see Neil Magny doing it either. Because Randy Brown, we saw what he did to, I'm blanking on his name. Nick Dalby. Yeah, we saw what he did to him. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And like, if he couldn't get Dos Santos out at 38, you know, I think Dos Santos still has some pop in his hands. I think he's still good, you know. He can still win some fights. And if you look at the only thing for Neil Magny, though, because it's like, other than that, you're like, all right, why would we take Neil Magny? It's the reach. You know, the 7-inch reach disadvantage for Dos Santos is going to be interesting how that plays out. Now, I don't think reach is some huge, big, telltale thing, but, you know, these guys are probably going to strike. Dos Santos does have the striking edge, but with that reach disadvantage, how much does that even it out? Because we know Neil Magny, his best chance to win this fight is not going to be a long-range kickboxing match. It's going to be, he's probably going to try and get it against the cage, win some minutes up against the cage, land some control time. That's probably going to be his way to do it. Make it ugly, make it gritty, try to survive as long as you can, and hope Dos Santos starts to slow down later on. That's his best chance. But I just don't know if he's going to be able to do that. I think if anyone's landed more powerful shots with more pop in them, it's going to be Dos Santos. And we've seen Neil Magny, he's been getting knocked out, I know, against absolute killers, and Dos Santos isn't quite that anymore, even after we saw what he did to BSD years ago. But at the same time, I just think Dos Santos has more power. He's going to have more pop in his hands. He's more dangerous on the feet and on the ground. And it's like, I don't want to pick Magny just because he has such a big reach advantage. You know what I mean? Like, Dos Santos is quick enough to be able to crash into the pocket a little bit more and make it ugly in the striking. I don't think it's reasonable to pick Magny just off that reach advantage because there's really nothing else that's going for him. You know what I mean? You think he's just going to take down Dos Santos the whole time? I don't think so. I don't see that. So, I mean, for the odds, I get it. You know, these guys are both older. They've been cracked. They've been knocked out. Anything could happen. It's a fist fight. So, when you have two older guys like this, I get if you wanted to play the dog, it makes sense. Just me personally, I just don't think there's enough value to go that way. If it was a plus 300, plus 400, maybe. But for minus 200 for Dos Santos, I actually think that's good value, in my opinion. So, going with Dos Santos on this one. Next up, we got Carol Rosa versus Nora Cornell. If any underdog on this card, I think this is probably the best value underdog out of any of them. Maybe Nick Klein too. I think Nora Cornell and Nick Klein are good dogs because This is a classic example of skill versus heart and grit and determination. So you got Karol Rosa. Karol Rosa is going to be the more technical striker. She's going to have better hands. She's going to be quicker. You know, she's going to have everything going her way in terms of the technical ability. Because Nora Cornell, one, she has, I don't want to say no fight IQ, but you can just tell with certain fighters, they just don't, they throw care to the wind. They just want to scrap. They want to beat ass. They want to get people hurt. They just love the thrill. They're going crazy with the crowd. They're beefing. They're talking shit. Nora Cornell is one of these people. The other person who's like that on this card, Piera Rodriguez, she's the same way. She talks shit. She bullies her way through fights. She doesn't give a damn about anything. And I respect that. I think that dog, you know, she has the dog advantage in this fight. Even though Souza's beast too. But I think in terms of like just raw, like, you know, that dog, I think Rodriguez has it. But that's a little bit closer. But it's not closer in this fight. Nora Cornell is going to be the dog in this one. So while she might be at a technical disadvantage against Karol Rosa in the striking, she's going to be a crash out. And Karol Rosa, you know, she had this fight with Irene Aldana, and this was a brutal fight. They took a ton of damage. They both did. And after that, you know, when certain fighters take that much damage and they really get beat on, you know, it makes sense when you start to see them get a little bit more timid, you know, a little more resistant. Like, you know, maybe I don't want to get into all these brawls, you know what I mean? Like Lewis versus Ngannou, like, you know what I mean? Like, you see guys start to be like, oh, you know, maybe I don't want to get punched in the face and get my head rocked 300 times on TV, you know what I mean? Like, it makes sense why people start to wean off a little bit after they start taking damage. And we've seen that in these two, I mean, at least in this fight, in these two, like, I know Perez is going to obviously be the takedown merchant, you know, so she did get dominated on the ground in this one, and I don't think that applies to Nora Cornell as much. But Karol Rosa is just, I like her a lot, you know, she's cool, but she's not very aggressive, and, you know, she's winning minutes, but she's not really doing a whole lot to be decisive on the scorecards. And although, yeah, she's never been knocked out, which I don't think Nora Cornell would submit her. She could, but I mean, when was the last time she got submitted? 2018? Yeah, I don't see that happening. You know, she's training around good people, she's good fighters. I don't think she's getting submitted. Nora Cornell is 35, Karol Rosa's 30, you know, so it's, the age doesn't help her, you know, but I mean, because the experience doesn't really match it, you know, with 18-7 versus 9-2. This is just one of those picks. I think either way, depending on what side you're on, there's definitely a good argument for both. You know, you can say with Karol Rosa, like, all right, you know, like, she's the more talented striker. If she can keep this on the feet, keep it at range, she should be able to win minutes and technically outstrike Nora Cornell. But on the other hand, if you're taking Nora Cornell, you're like, you know what? She can make it ugly. She can make it dirty. She can get into a scrap. And Karol Rosa is not going to likely match that level of dog and the intensity. And, you know, maybe Nora Cornell is given one to take one, and she goes into that knowing, like, all right, I'm going to have to take a few shots so I can land my own, but I'm okay with that. And, you know, maybe all that pressure, all that aggression, all that nonstop crashing in the pocket, maybe that gets to Rosa. You know, maybe that starts to wear her down, and maybe it's a close first one, but maybe Nora loses the first round. The second one, she starts to pick up the pace. You know, she starts to get a little bit more crazy. Her corner is hyping her up, and the crowd's going wild, and that boosts her, and she starts to get even more wild. And then in the third round, she completely takes over. Like, I could see this because this girl is a crash out. And for these odds at plus 155, I think she's totally worth it. Because there's no real physical advantage for Karol Rosa here, you know. The about the same reach. She's going to have a little bit of a height advantage. You know, she can use the grappling if she wants to. You know, we saw against Haley Cohen, she got that sub. So she has the threat there that's available. I like Nora Cornell in this one. You know, this is like, I hate picking against the more technical fighter going for the crash out. You know, because then it's like, all right, you're picking on someone out dogging the other person, even though they might not be as good of a fighter. You know, like, I don't like doing that often, but in this type of matchup, I think the skill level is close enough to where it can be a very competitive fight. And I think Nora Cornell's dog mentality and just like the do or die could easily be enough to win it over on the scorecards if it goes there. So I'll take Nora Cornell. I'm kind of going back and forth in this one, but I do like the dog here. I think for the value side, I think it's definitely on her. So next up, we got Elves Brener versus Esteban Ribovics. Now, I think both of these guys are in tricky spots. Because on one hand, I think Elves Brener is underestimated just a little bit off his recent performances. But on the other hand, I think Esteban Ribovics is overestimated just a little bit. Now, with Elves Brener, we'll start off with him. With his fight with Oralbai, Oralbai has been a problem for anyone he's fought. Oralbai is a guy who's quickly sneaking up. Yeah, he won this fight. It was unanimous, but at the same time, it was a decent scrap. People look at the Yoel Alvarez fight and they're like, all right, he got knocked out by Yoel Alvarez. Yoel Alvarez finishes everyone. He beats everyone by finish. He is an absolute demon. I would take Yoel Alvarez over Esteban Ribovics. I think he would finish him too. And it's like, yeah, his wins, this win was gifted. This win was totally gifted. He was getting his ass kicked by Gore, but he lands, I don't want to say a lucky shot, but it kind of was a lucky shot towards the very end, that if he didn't get that shot, it was in the neck too. It's like something hit him. So he threw something off with his body because Gore just shut down after that. But if he didn't get that shot, he would have lost. But at the same time, Brener is a tough SOB, man. He's going to keep pushing. He does not give up. He stays in your face. He wants to make fights ugly. He wants to make it dirty. And, he's had moments of success. When his fight against Oralbai, yes, Oralbai was taking him down and he was landing takedowns, but we saw moments during that fight where he was having grappling success, and when he was getting into the scrambles with Oralbai, there were times where he was reversing Oralbai and he was getting to a dominant position, which I thought was super impressive. And if this fight goes to the ground, I can't say with a lot of certainty that Esteban Ribovics would out-grapple Elves Brener. Maybe Brener goes into this one thinking, all right, my best chance is to grapple, and he goes for a grappling-heavy game plan. He's a shoot-a-box guy. These guys can grapple. He has submissions, 11 submissions. This guy's comfortable on the ground. And yeah, sure, we saw him get out-wrestled by Oralbai, but he could have success in the grappling against a guy like Esteban Ribovics, who really is just a striker. He wants to keep it standing up. In the Yoel Alvarez fight, I don't really put that as a big dig to him, because I think Yoel Alvarez is knocking out or submitting just about anyone in this division outside of the top 15. Especially if you're outside of the top 15, I think Yoel Alvarez is probably running right through you. But I think this loss that's not a bad loss. The fact he made it into the third round where Yoel is finishing literally everyone is not a bad loss. So, and then you got Esteban Ribovics. This is where his fight against Nasrat, I think you easily could have argued that Esteban won this fight. But the thing with Esteban striking that I think people are going to catch on to, that when he gets to a higher level, it's going to be a bit of a problem, is that he sticks to a lot of the same combinations, where he just constantly throws the same 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. And it's repetitive. And sometimes he gets punished for it, and you can see Nasrat was one of the guys that once the level of competition with Esteban starts to go up, you can see people start to read his striking and then counter it. And sometimes Esteban has a hard time adapting to that. And that's why he gave up this first round, because he was just getting outworked on the feet, especially when Nasrat was fresh and he was being able to make some early reads and read the combinations that Esteban was throwing. He was able to counter them. Now, do I think Brener is the guy to do that? Probably not. So I think he should still have the advantage on the feet here. It should be pretty clear. I think Esteban's going to be able to really just outland. His volume is so high. The pace that he's able to push is so... It's like some Max Holloway level pace that this man pushes. So I think against a guy like Brener, who doesn't throw as much, the difference is absolutely absurd. 4 to 8, double the amount of 6 strikes landed per minute. It's insane. And I think Elves Brener is durable enough to last, but we've seen him knocked out, obviously, especially as this fight starts to go on. I don't think he's going to be able to keep up the pace that Esteban Ribovics is facing, but I am worried about the grappling here. It could be something that people aren't thinking about, that Brener could definitely pull out of nowhere. And if for minus 260, and this line's going to keep moving as the week progresses too, I imagine he'll probably be a minus 350 or something by the time this fight actually happens, if not worse. I'm a bit worried about that, because we saw Esteban Ribovics in his loss against Loic. This was a good fight, but Lord knows how much damn control time he had. What was it at? Yeah, 7 minutes of control time. And that was one of his losses. And you're like, all right, look, this fight was very close on the feet. And after his fight against Michael Johnson with Zellhuber, that win ages a little bit worse. Terrence McKinney makes sense, kill or be killed. But it's like, this is the fight that really shows me, like, all right, this guy does have some grappling. I don't want to say holes, because Loic is actually, he's a bad man. He can put in some work. But there are ways to beat Esteban Ribovics, and it's not getting into a who can get to 200 strikes landed race, trying to push the pace in a boxing match against Esteban Ribovics. That's not the way to do it. He did against Daniel Zellhuber, and that was very, very close, but we just saw Daniel get completely outstriked and outclassed on the feet. So I'm like, I don't know how much that win really has the impact on this pick. And then you especially look at the Nazarite, and you're like, all right, when he lost, he got outstruck, He got his punches, they got read. Nazarite was able to read his shots. He was able to have early success. He won the first round, and the second and third were more competitive. But I don't know, man. There's something about this just rubs me the wrong way. I know I'm ranting a little bit, because a lot of people are saying like Esteban is like an absolute lock this week, and I'm like, those shoot to box guys can grapple, man. And we know Brener has a ton of submissions on his record. I'm not saying he submits Esteban Ribovics, but we saw, Orolbai was able to out-wrestle him, but he landed reversals, and he got to dominant positions, and there were moments where he was up on Orolbai, and he was taking control on the ground, and I think if he could do that against Orolbai, I think he damn well could do it against Esteban Ribovics. So, that being said, I know I'm yapping about this one, but the pick is Esteban Ribovics, because I think if he can keep this on the feet, his amount of volume is going to be so high, and it's going to be not even close, that you're going to look at the end of the rounds, you look at the stats, and you'll be like, oh my God, Elves Brener landed 10 significant strikes, and Ribovics landed 50. It'll be insane the amount of difference it can be if it's on the feet. And I think it's going to look like that too, when the crowd reactions too, when they see some guy landing, and Brener doesn't really take damage all that well. When he bleeds, he bleeds. I forget whatever fight it was in. It might have been the Goran fight. I think it was, where his hair was like this, not like the Charles Oliveira blonde. It was like a white, like a frost white. And he had this cut right on his forehead. And in the beginning of his fight, his hair is white. And at the end, it is just completely red. It's like Jillian Robertson of a red. So I'm like, this guy, when he gets cut, he takes damage bad. So if this does go to a decision, I could see that damage starting to add up and look a lot worse for him. Whereas Esteban Ribovics, he does take damage, but I don't think necessarily as bad as Brener, from what I can remember. But the pick is Esteban, just for his striking advantage on the feet. He should have a clear advantage. But if this gets to the ground and they start grappling, and Brener manages to pick up maybe, let's say, the first round from going for a grappling heavy game plan, maybe by the third round he's slowed down. It starts slow. Esteban can win that round, striking, keeping it on the feet, and it comes down to the second round. I think it could be a lot trickier than people think. A lot of people are completely writing off Brener when it's like, really? It's Alvarez and Orolbai? I think people are underestimating him and overestimating Esteban. I'd be very careful on this one this week. I'd be careful. But anyway, I know I'm going on a lot about that one. But anyway, next up, we got Mateusz Rebecki. I know I'm not saying that right. Rebecki versus Chris Duncan. Now, Chris Duncan is a guillotine merchant. Yes, we know this. But I think he is slightly overrated. Now, it's one of those guys where it's like, when they're the guillotine merchants that are kind of like pulling them out of thin air against lower level guys, it kind of makes them look better than they are, because they're like, you get to start thinking like, all right, well, this guy's some like BJJ like wizard, like, look at his record, all the submissions. And you're like, well, you look at his record, oh, he only has 3 submissions in his entire record. Oh, 2 of them are in the last 2 fights he's had. Oh, they're both guillotines. So it's like, I don't know if it's all that big of a threat, especially knowing that Rebecki, he's going to keep it on the feet. This guy wants to stand and bang. He wants to throw haymakers with all the power in the world. And then we look at Chris Duncan's record, and he got knocked out by Slavoclaws on the Dana White Contender Series. That was only a couple years ago still. I mean, yeah, like a little more than like 3-ish years ago. But at the same time, I'm like, if you're getting knocked out by Slavoclaws, I think Rebecki's going to run right through you. And that's a early second round knockout. And he got knocked the hell out, too. This wasn't some, like, soft TKO. No, he got rocked. He got messed up. And I just think Rebecki, the type of guy who, he broke Orobai's face in the first round. I'm like, Chris Duncan does not have the durability to be able to keep up with that. I just don't think he's going to be able to survive that type of beating. He couldn't. This is the thing with Chris Duncan, too. People think Chris Duncan, he's super dangerous, like he's going to wrap up anything. In his fight against Yanal Ashmouz broke his hand in the first round. Completely broke his hand. If you go rewatch that fight, in the second and third rounds, is literally, he's fighting and he has like one hand, or because I think he broke it. He was blocking a head kick, I think, and he put his hand up to block it. Boom, gets kicked, gets broken. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. So when you see it, you can see him second and third round, he switches a stance because the hand that he was guarding, with from the kicks from, he has to switch because he doesn't want to get hit there anymore. So he has like one hand like back, he switches stances, and Chris Duncan's still not able to do anything. Yeah, he wins the rounds, but like you can't knock out or finish a dude with one hand. Kind of insane, absolutely crazy to me. That fight definitely kind of got me off of him a little bit. And that's the thing too. I am good with picking Chris Duncan fights. I've done very good. I did not think he was going to get a win against Manuel Torres. I thought Manuel Torres was going to run right through him. I picked him against Bloji Oki because I don't think Bloji Oki's all that good. And I picked him against Jordan Vucenic too. I think, what was he, an underdog? He was a big dog too. And I picked him. What was he? I think like plus 300, I think. Or plus 220. I think it was even wider than this by the time the fight started. Because I cashed him as a big dog. Because I just looked. Vucenic is just not that good. He never impressed me. And I'm like, all right, two guys that aren't anything crazy. Give me the plus 300 something underdog. Same with Bloji Oki. He was just not impressive to me. He's from Germany. I don't know how the scene's out there. Like, I don't know. He's just never impressed me. He's never looked that great. I was like, who did he just fight to in a decently close one? Yeah, this guy. Wait, I was going to say next fight. I was like, he didn't fight Mason Jones. The Oswald Jr. dude, he stepped up short notice, I think, too. Yeah, he stepped up really short notice. And he did get his ass kicked a little bit, but considering it was a short notice, random step up, he really did a lot better. But anyway, both of these wins, too, I did pick him in both of these, but the thing is, like, these submissions where it's just kind of like, he's going to submit someone who doesn't know what they're doing, and if you shoot in on a random sloppy takedown, yeah, he's going to guillotine you. Mateusz Rebecki is just one of those guys where he's too experienced at this point. This guy's seen it all. He's gone against his war with Orolbai. Like, he's experienced enough in the grappling, and I think he's going to beat Chris Duncan's ass on the feet. I see no reason at all why Rebecki would ever go and shoot a takedown against Chris Duncan. I just don't see it. He knows he's going to have the advantage on the feet. He knows he's going to be the more dangerous striker. He knows Chris Duncan's chin has been cracked before. I don't know why the hell he would gas himself out. That's the thing, too. He knows his cardio. The way he fights and the way he brawls and throws these haymakers, he can't keep that pace up for a super long time, let alone keep in the grappling. If you start adding in grappling to throwing haymakers, if that's your style, and you just start shooting for takedowns too, you're going to gas the hell out. And we saw against Orolbai, at least that was a war, and he was, they were both death gas towards the end, but at least we know, all right, he can be tired and still keep the pace going a little bit, So against a guy like Chris Duncan, I think Chris Duncan has had a good path to where he's gotten some favorable matchups. Not saying that he's had any favors done his way. Shout out to Chris Duncan. He seems like a cool dude. But I just think this is where the train kind of ends here. I think this is similar to Emmanuel Torres. You put Chris Duncan against a dangerous guy with a lot of power, and it's probably going to be a problem. And I think Rebecki's probably that guy. I think he's probably going to put him out early. I'd say the first round, maybe within the first 2 rounds. I don't see this going long. I don't see Chris Duncan getting a random guillotine win. I can't see any way really for him to get this. I think the only way he does is a late submission. I think the only way Chris Duncan probably could win this fight is if Rebecki goes balls to the walls first 2 rounds, he death gasses in the third, and Chris Duncan somehow has perfect cardio and he's able to wrap up a guillotine really quick. I just don't think that's very likely. I don't think that's likely at all. Diego Ferreira, yeah, he knocked him out, but that was towards the very, very end, and he just had no way to get out. He was getting dominated on the ground like a ground and pound. if I'm remembering correctly. And I was like, I don't think that's the type of thing is going to happen against Chris Duncan. If Chris Duncan's trying to take it to the ground, he's trying to aura farm with the guillotine. So I'm like, I don't see a path for him. I think for minus 200, I think the odds are actually, I think the value is on Rebecki. I think he's probably going to be a good pick this week. I'm probably going to go on him with some props too. I think all the value's on him. For minus 200, it's very, very, very worth it to me. I think the odds are there. I think this line is a lot closer than people think, mainly due to the recency bias on this line, because they're like, shit, we made this dude a giant underdog and he screwed us. We're not going to do that again. But I think against a guy like Rebecki, that's not the guy where that applies. That logic applies to this. So I like Rebecki in this one. Next up, got main event, Tatsuro Taira versus Hyunsung Park. Asian on Asian hate is kind of crazy. I don't know why these guys are going against each other. I wish it would have been someone else. But at the same time, I like Tatsuro Taira. I like them both, but I was excited for Tatsuro Taira to go fight on this card. I thought there's a chance that we're going to replace it with like Waldo fighting someone in a heavyweight fight, which I was excited for that too. Because I was excited to see Park fight Steve Erceg too. I thought that would have been good. Now, in this one, though, I think everything points to Taira. I think Hyunsung Park, he's going to have the striking advantage on the feet. He has quick hands. He probably has better hands than Taira. Although Taira's hands aren't... He's not like a Rafael Estevam where he's a one-trick pony grappler. We saw he had some decent striking exchanges when he fought Royval in this fight, when he lost that split decision. I think that was a good call. I don't know. It should have been a unanimous, in my opinion. I think it was pretty clear. It was 2-3 rounds in terms of... I think Tatsuro won. What was it? I had it 2-2 going into the fifth, and I think Royval clearly secured the fifth round. I think Taira had the. Oh, what was it? I think it was the second and the fourth. I feel like it almost like went 1-1. Like Royval had success on the feet, then Taira dominated on the ground. Royval on the feet, Taira on the ground. 2-2 going into the fifth, and then Royval was able to keep it on the feet, had success on the feet in the fifth, just barely squeaked it by. And I like Taira a lot because he's only 25 years old. This dude is barely younger than I am, or barely older, barely older than I am. And he has a ton of heart. We saw when he lost this fight against Brandon Royval, he started crying. And some people might be like, oh, well, he started crying. No, that means this dude cares. This dude is dedicated. He cares about his craft. He was so upset. He started crying. I like that. I'm like, all right, that means this is everything for him. He lost his He was heartbroken. He's ready to get it back. And I think, unfortunately for Park, he's probably going to get it back. I think especially he's been training for a 5-round fight, whereas Park was only training for a 3-rounder against Steve Erceg. Like, I think the cardio, I don't think Park has cardio, lacking cardio or cardio problems, but I just think Taira, he's been training for it. He should have a huge advantage in that regard. I think he should be the better grappler. He should be able to take this to the ground. I'm trying to think. We go through Park's record. The level of competition is what kind of holds me back too. Because I know this, they say it's like this belt. I forget what it was. It was like a Road to UFC. I know it was on this fight night, but it was like a Road to UFC thing, or I forget what the hell it was. But he fought this Choi dude. All right fight. Shannon Ross. Mid, he was just dogging him, knocked him out. He's chinny though. How many times has Shannon Ross been finished? Yeah, 6 out of 9 losses, 5 knockouts. So I don't hold a ton of weight behind that knockout win. He looked good. The same with Carlos Hernandez. I don't think Carlos Hernandez is good. I don't hold, because I know these guys have both fought him, right? Yeah, I don't hold either of these wins for either of them having much meaning at all. Honestly, they don't really mean a whole lot to me. That's the thing though. That's Park UFC level. That's his whole level of competition at the UFC. It's not that high, So yes, he is 10-0. He's looking damn good. I think he'll be good. I think he'll be a good contender. 29 years old. He's older than Taira, so got to give him that. Oh, Creative Cloud. I don't know why that popped up, but at 29, he's older, where Taira is only 25, but the level of competition and the difference of fights, 16-1 versus 10-0, even though Taira's the younger guy. And if you look at the level of competition too, Carlos, Jesus Aguilar is actually decent though. He's actually a good fighter. In fact, he got a round 1 sub. That's impressive. Edgar Chaez, you see who he went against? Boom. This was a war against Josh Van. this was a war. They were both rocked. They both almost knocked each other out. Another good win. Carlos Fernandez, yeah, I don't really hold a lot in that, honestly, at all. Alex Perez, this was an injury where it was like he was grappling and he messed up his knee. But, I mean, it was Taira taking the position that caused that injury, in the sense of, like, it wasn't like some fluke Tom Aspinall blowing out his knee. It was because Taira was dominating him. You know, it was a good fight. You know, maybe not fully dominating, but I mean, he was winning and he looked damn good. And it sucks that Perez got injured, but I think he still could have easily won that fight had that injury not happened. And then in Royval, you know, when he fought Royval, he looked really good. You know, it really came down to one round. It was 2-2 going into the fifth. You got to have a ton of respect for this fight right there. And I think that's just everything is pointing towards Taira because of that. He's been training for this 5-rounder. He's been ready. He's been prepared. You know, he's fought the higher level of competition. He's going to have a serious advantage on the ground and the grappling and the takedowns. And his striking, every time we see his striking, it's going to hopefully look better and better and better and better and better. And for Park, you know, he's fresh, he's green. He hasn't really fought any high-level competition before, and now he's being thrown into a main event 5-rounder out of nowhere that's kind of coming from a couple days' notice. Everything, you got to favor Taira. These odds could be a little wide. I feel like whichever way you say it's going to be the opposite. If you say these odds look wide, then Taira's going to go in there and get a first-round submission, and you're going to be like, oh my God, he looked like a -1,000. Or if you're saying, oh, these odds are super accurate, you know, Taira should look like a huge favorite, it's going to be an all-out war. These guys are going to go 5 rounds long, and it's going to be an absolute insane back and forth. You know, like I feel like it could go either way. I don't think Park gets finished in the first round, obviously, but I mean, I think there's a chance Taira could get a submission. I could see this going long. I could see it going either way. It is nice, though, in this fight, he has that 4-inch reach advantage. I didn't even notice that at first. That will definitely help him, at least in the striking, where he might be down a peg compared to Park, you know, because, you know, that was a tough time against Royval. I don't know which Royval's reach. It's got to be longer than his. Stats or bio. 68? Oh, damn. Oh, shit. I didn't think it would be that low for... Oh. Never mind. So even less than that of an advantage. I thought for sure it would be more because he's 5'9" to 5'7". Damn, he's just got long-ass arms. Now that you say that, you know, his arms are pretty long. That's funny. But, yeah, that is interesting. So, I mean, that'll help him even more in this case in the striking then. I mean, shit, he'll have another 2 inches of an advantage compared to Royval, so that should help him. Because I don't think Park's striking is going to be as good as Brandon Royval, so maybe he'll be able to hang more in that case, you know, so... I think everything is leaning to Taira. I know I've been yapping about this one. Were we at just about an hour? Yeah, I've been yapping about this one. But yeah, I like Taira in this one. I think he should win. Everything's pointing towards him. But I like Park too. You know, Park will be no walk in the park. I think he, no pun intended. But yeah, I think there's good things for Park ahead. You know, I just don't think this is really the right step for him. But I'm glad he took it. You know, if you're in this position, taking a short notice main event, you know, I think it made sense for him to take it even if he loses. So I like Taira in this one, but. Anyway, guys, that's been it for the breakdown for UFC Fight Night Taira versus Park. I keep having to correct myself from saying Albazi versus Taira. So UFC Fight Night Taira versus Park, you know, hope you guys like the breakdowns. I'm going to have more videos coming later this week, you know, the usual series, the locks and traps. And I'm going to have a weigh-in recap, little betting breakdown video. So make sure you guys stay tuned for those videos coming this week. I waited a little bit on this one just because I know they've been changing fights around and we've been moving stuff around. They added some, taking some off. You know, I'm really upset they got rid of the Azamat Bekoev fight. I was excited to watch him. That dude's a beast. So I'm glad they're rebooking that fight for later on this year. So that'll be a fun one. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching again. Thank you so much for all the love on the recent videos. And until next time, it's your boy Jacob from Topside MMA. And I'll see y'all. So peace.